Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description. Oh, this place is too full still. Let's get some coffee. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're back on the little 1969 Morris Mini 1000, a car which I don't want you to think I've forgotten, but things are going on in the background because, as you can probably tell, judging by the fact that that is a bare shell and the engine's on the floor over here, quite a big project. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering what's happening and why the delays. Well, that shell does need to be stripped down to the barest of bare metals before we carry on, because I know it's had various repairs over the last few decades and it's had accident damage and all kinds of other stuff, and I need to get to the bottom of that. And there's various ways we could strip this back down. The cheapest financially but the slowest in terms of hours put into the car would be to get an angle grinder and a wire brush and just sit there for hours on end just whirring over it noisily, messily, and well, not most effectively and potentially damagingly. That's one option. Option number two, to get it acid dipped, which is a good system, except it does leave all the crevices full of potential paint damaging acid to leak out later on. Or there's soda blasting or media blasting, which is another option. And then of course the question is, do I do it myself or do I pay someone to do it? If I pay someone to do it, it's a lot of money, a huge investment of a couple of £1,000s potentially. Or do I go and invest in getting the equipment here and have a crack myself, which is potentially more enjoyable, but a steep learning curve. Anyway, all of this takes time to do in the background, so that's why you haven't seen a lot of that now. I've got this down to the shell stage. Sorting that next stage out has taken longer than I kind of would have hoped. Let me come to the other side of the engine because I feel a bit impersonal hiding behind an A-series. So, what's next? Well, while I'm waiting for that to happen, I thought we ought to really take a look at the engine, because really nothing on this project is insurmountable or an end of the project kind of situation. Lots of things can stack up. When you're this deeply into a project, there's no real end of the road for it, so we'll be fine one way or another. But one thing we haven't looked at is this, the engine and gearbox. Now, the big question has been constantly, ever since this car arrived, do I keep this as an automatic? Because as you know, I flippin' hate automatics. I've made no secret about it. The fact I've got a daily automatic at the moment and people thought that would change my views and make me sort of soften and warm to them, it's just made me hate them even more. However, there are virtually no mini automatics left on the road. It was not a popular seller at the time. It's basically a thing that old people drove back then, and minis were, well, kind of everyman car that everyone drove. However, this one was exactly case in point. An old lady bought it. But because of the absolute rarity value of this thing, I think there's like a dozen or so left on the road. I need to go and check the figures again, but there's not a huge number of Mark IIs at all. Very few Mark II 1000s, very few Morris Mini 1000s, and automatic Morris Mini 1000s, hen's teeth, absolute hen's teeth. So in terms of rarity value, I kind of feel like I have to keep that significant part of it. We can make a few other changes to the car as we go along, but for the most part, we'll keep it mostly standard. However, one thing we've not looked at, which could be a game changer here, because if it's no longer matching numbers, there's no point sticking with the auto, is I've never looked at the engine. I was told it ran when parked, but that parked was over 25 years ago. There's a good possibility, and I really should have done this sooner. This might just be a massive paperweight I'm lugging around the garage here. But today, for the first time, which is something I really should have done, as I say, a long time ago, we're going to have a look inside. Have a look at the oil, see if it turns, get an endoscope down inside, an endoscope or borescope inside the cylinders and see what we're looking at, because who knows? Honestly, I've no idea what I'm going to find in there. It might be pristine, it might be junk. And then I'm into a whole building an A-series of videos. Although, and this is pretty much typical of me, I did go and get very excited and get a little bit previous. I went and had a can of middle bronze green aerosol and etch primer mixed up so that I could yeah, just clean it and paint it, but I should probably check whether it might work or not first. Right, so starting off, taking the spark plugs out, and I didn't actually bring a spark plug spanner with me. I thought I had one over here, it turns out I didn't, but luckily this thing is not in the engine bay, so I can use a full-on ring spanner to get these things out. Ooh. The first one is actually basically finger tight, and it looks like it was probably pretty new. Go on, focus. It looks like it was pretty new when it was installed. Looks like it has run, but only just. That's one good one. So let's see what the rest are like. Oh crikey, that's tight. Ow. It's quite oily, that one. Quite black. Okay. Wow, that's tight. Now this one, okay, this is interesting. The first one looked like brand new. Later ones are actually kind of rusty, so this looks like oil in the cylinder. Or is that for preservation or is that a leak? And rusty spark plugs, so yeah, that's potentially concerning. But hey, it's going to be a long winter. Well, again, very oily and very rusty, so well, the positive of this I'm going to take away, because I always look for the silver lining on these situations, is that if that is covered in oil in there, chances are the bores are covered in oil and won't have gone rusty. So that's a good thing. Right, so now I'm going to get the little endoscope thing inside the engine. It's not a bad little picture, is it really? And the thing I'm using is this Draper Wi-Fi check endoscope thing with Bluetoothing to my phone. There's a link to this on the Amazon store down below. Right, let's have a look inside the bays, the bores even. Okay, so in we go. Okay, so that piston, I guess, is right at the top. Can't see rust, I can see black and I can see silver, which is good. Again, not seeing rust. Let's put the sideways 90-degree view thing on there. So 90-degree attachment is on there, like a tiny periscope. Oh, that piston is right at the top. And what I'm looking at there is the side of the cylinder, and it looks like silver metal, which is what I want to see. I don't want to see red rust. Shiny cylinder wall, which is very promising indeed. Yeah, this is good. I'm liking what I'm seeing here. This is all very good indeed. I've had to put the ceramic heater thing back on again because it's amazing how quickly it gets cold when you turn it off to do the filming, so I have to live with the noise for a little bit. It's really interesting looking at this subframe kind of in detail, because absolutely everything of the running of the car is here in this one little package. Obviously the frame itself has got the engine bolted into it, the gearbox and the engine are shared items. Interestingly, I was reading up on one of the classic mini books that someone sent me through to Junk in the Trunk, and this is one of the only automatic gearboxes you can bump start or jump start, because it shares the oil with the engine, unlike normal gearboxes which have the transmission fluid as a separate thing from the engine. And yeah, you can drive it like a semi-automatic manual as well, just bumping between the 4 gears. So it's quite a clever little device. So from that point of view, it's worth saving as well, I suppose. Yeah, also we've got the brake system is in here, the steering system is in here. The entire running of the car is just in this little package just here. Very interesting design. Now I need to get this little bracket here off. Now I've no idea how crusty this is going to... Oh wow, not crusty at all. I was expecting this to put up a proper old fight. Now to go with the Draper socket drives, I did get a set of Draper Imperial sockets for working over here on this car as well, because that seemed like it would make a sensible thing to do. I've got an impact driver over there. Why am I doing this by hand? The other day I did actually bring a gallon of petrol and a battery over here, and I thought, should I see if I can fire this thing up and do a video on that? Then it occurs to me it hasn't actually got a complete distributor, and yeah, there's lots of stuff missing, so that's not going to happen. Right, so now, oh, I still haven't got access. I had some spanners here a minute ago. We're in an empty room and I've lost my spanners. Now, one of the first things I got when I moved into here was a big pack of spanners, which I actually leave hanging on the wall. It's quite convenient that way. This goes up to a 32mm, and you think a tiny weeny engine like this, that'd be big enough, but no, I think that's a 30, well, whatever the Imperial equivalent of a 33 or 34 is. So, just going to try doing this the horrible way. Just see if I can put any pressure on this, and oh my goodness, that turns. Huh? Obviously there's no compression, but that turns so easily. That is remarkable. Huh? That means the engine is probably absolutely fine. Let's pop that rocker cover off as well, just have a quick look underneath there. Right, let's see. Oh, that's incredibly loose. I suspect this might have been partially undone and then reassembled before I got hold of it. Now, I did buy a new rocker cover gasket over at the Isle of Wight at that big mini event I went to in the Ridge with the family. That was a really nice day. If we decided that Mrs. Furious was going to be part of the channel back then, we could have done quite a lot more of that event, because obviously we all went together down in 2001 Cooper. Had a really nice time on that trip, actually. Minis bring people together. Right. Oh, there we go. So that is pretty yucky inside there, to be fair, but that will clean up okay, and I have got the nice new green paint to make it look lovely. Now the question is, does this rotate when I turn that? I guess I can go and borrow a bigger spanner off someone down the hall. Right, I've been and acquired a better thing, so let's get this on here and see if this does actually turn the rockers, and if we've got a good engine or not, because that is the decider as to whether or not we need to rebuild this engine. Yeah, we've got movement there. What apparently looks like a full range of all the pistons turning up and down. Huzzah! How good does that? That turns so smoothly as well. I mean, I should have checked there's oil in the sump, but the fact there's a puddle of the stuff underneath the engine would have been, well, it's just a good giveaway that there's oil in there. So that is such good news. It turns so smoothly. It's like butter, or butter if you watch legit street cars. There is a bit of surface rust on the top of these rockers, but I don't think that's anything to actually worry about, because they are quite, well, oily, and everything just turns so smoothly. Do you know what, I never actually checked the dipstick, which is probably a mistake, because, well, you need to know whether there's oil in there or not. But the fact that there is so much oil leaking out the bottom of it, I kind of assumed there would be some in there anyway. Here we go. Here is a dipstick, and it is filthy black goop. This is like cartoon gusher, and it's well above max as well. Hang on. Yeah. If you look at the level of this, this is to there, and the max is there. So this was clearly really overfilled for storage. So thank you, previous owner. You've done me a massive favour here by doing that, because this is now, well, it's preserved the engine internally absolutely beautifully. So the thing I've got to do now is start cleaning it up. I just don't know where to begin. I'll take a few of these brackets and things off and get a wire brush on it, I guess. And I'm doing a bit of checking as to what the colour of both the block and the rocker should be, and I believe it should both be this middle bronze green even, sorry, yeah, code 223 for both the engine itself and for the rocker cover. So that will then look splendid. But first of all, the takeaway from this video is fabulous. I've not got to rebuild the engine. I know it's a simple thing to rebuild anyway, but the fact that we've not got to rebuild it now is an enormous relief. Before I take anything else off, because this is frankly a bit of a mess, I'm going to stick a bit of brake and clutch over this and have a little go at cleaning it up. I mean, the rocker cover 100% wants a new bit of paint on it. But I imagine this block will want this as well, to be fair. Oh, that bit's silver. Who knew? And it's got the letters 1000 on it. That's how you know it's a 1000 cc, well, 998 engine. Well, that's kind of interesting that the red is coming off on, or the green is coming off and showing a red underneath. I guess that's the undercoat stuff. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be saying, why am I not taking this engine apart completely, rebuilding it from scratch? And the thing is, there's a lot going on in this project, and do I really need to be doing extra things that don't need to be done? If it's got cleanly moving pistons, the valve gear is moving smoothly, and it's not leaking oil worse than any other A series in the world, do I really need to be making that much work and expense for myself when I can just concentrate on cleaning it up and focusing on the bodywork? Oh wow, look at that, shiny underneath. Wow, that is thick. Man, that is like thick, thick goop. God dear. It's like an oily bird's nest in there. So that's the output from the gearbox just there. Oh, that actually looks quite pleasant, having been degreased quite as extensively as that. I mean, there's still a way to go, but wow, what a difference a day makes and all that. Oh, that's so thick. The oil, the goopy, oily mess is just so thick on this. I'm going to have a bit of cleaning up to do once I'm done here, of the floor itself. I should have brought some paintbrushes with me. I know you're probably screaming this already, but I really should have brought some paintbrushes along. It would have made my life so much easier in here. So I guess the subframe, it probably needs to be black, doesn't it, once I've got that cleaned off as well. Yeah, I definitely need a stiff bristle brush to get in here as well. This is interesting, there are flakes of green paint just here as well, and down there. So should the entire gearbox have been painted green too? That's interesting. I'd assumed the gearbox was actually silver, not green also. That is very interesting. I did buy the Veloce's book about the entire history of Morris Minis, or Morris cars I should say, trying to get some facts about this stuff, but even that is a bit hazed in murk when it comes to this level of detail. I mean, I'm not doing concourse here, but you know, it's nice to get things as close to right as we can. So I'm taking photos as I go along, but I'm just whipping off a few more little brackets and things just to get a better access so that when I do come to paint this, I'm going to be able to do the entire block more nicely. That's the wrong size. That is a lot of washers just there, which makes me wonder if this is the wrong bolt in this particular hole for some reason. I'm curious as to what this bracket here is. Oh, it's a sensor, isn't it? There's a hot water and a sensor of some kind. There's a cut-off hot water pipe just there. I'm going to have a huge gallery of random photos of little brackets all on my phone, just because I'll have no idea where everything goes otherwise. And I'm going to look at this in a couple of months' time and go, what is it? Where does it go? Need to wheedle a bit of pipe off because that'll be easier to wheedle off here while it's attached to an engine. And that is literally, oh my God, can you see it? Carving into little pieces rather than coming free. I mean, I know there are people who can take an A series apart, an entire Mini apart in fact, just from memory. But this is the first time I've ever touched a Mini. I mean, I've ridden in them, driven a few, always enjoyed them, never taken one apart. Never even owned a car with an A series in it. I mean, this is like the British LS in a way, because there are so many of them all around the place. Let's whip the fan off as well, just to make more access, and I can paint the I can clean the fan for one thing, then I can paint the pulleys behind it. Now this, seeing this here, alternator bracket, I assume it is, has reminded me I haven't got an alternator. I mean, it would probably be broken anyway after so long resting in the muck, but you know, it's one more thing to go and buy, isn't it? Ah, I see. It comes off this way. He says learning as he goes along. Now I assume this rusty old effort here is actually a cartridge oil filter, but I'm not going to take it off now because obviously I want the oil to stay in the engine until such time as I'm actually going to drain it and, well, until I paint it actually. Oh man, there's so much to do. There's the starter motor sitting there. That needs to be greened as well. Oh, there's a strappy thing of some kind there. So many bits and pieces. I'm going to have to replace just so many little fixings and things. Little bits that are broken, little bits that need replacing. I'm careful not to break this capillary pipe that goes to the oil pressure gauge just there. Though we'll pop that out when it comes time to paint this. So much to do. Right, and then we've got all these random cut-off hoses that I had to slice through to get the thing apart because, well, you know, they weren't coming apart in the engine bay. And we were in a hurry. Oh God, look at that crust from old fluid. This is interesting. This is a tap piece, effectively. So I'm not going to bin this because I'll need it for reference for what goes back there. I don't know how different a Mark II, or indeed an automatic, will be in terms of the cooling system, if at all. Well, that's interesting. That is a rusted off metal water pipe. So, and to figure out what that would have been and replace that as well. Now the fact that the thermostat covering has got no bolts on it at all, or no nuts on it, is the teensiest bit concerning because it might mean that there was a problem with that, but I'm not seeing signs of warpage or leakage, so I'm hoping it's not overheated. I'm going to give that a bit of a gentle hammer tap to free off. This is a new thing. I've never before squirted the Bulldog and there's been a cloud of rusty flakes disappearing into the distance before I've actually got the juice onto the thing. I get through so much of this stuff. So if either Bulldog or AeroPress are watching, I'm looking for new channel sponsors. Give me a shout. I am joking. I know Bulldog don't sponsor channels, but AeroPress, if you're watching. Well, do you know what? I've actually been fighting this for a little while. I can see the gap between the engine block and the thermostat housing itself. I can see the gasket, which is kind of poking out from underneath. It is just not moving in there at all, or out of there, I should say, at all. Well, there's loads more cleaning to do, and it's always asking more questions than it's answering by being down here doing stuff. I mean, obviously I want to be changing or buying new hydroelastic, it's hydroelastic on this generation, isn't it? Suspension components, and there's a company down, I think they're in the West Country, that will do all of that, and they'll come along and help out with that. But how much do I need to take apart here? I guess I need to take out these cones from inside this area here, so how much of this suspension area needs to come apart? Looking at the rubber boots on the steering and on the steering rack, and they all look pretty good, to be fair. They're probably from the 90s, but they seem pretty decent. I'll just have a quick look at buzzing over some of this metal here just to get an idea of what the block looks like when it's been cleaned up a little bit. Now I'm taking a chance here that I can just slacken this off and then rotate. Yeah, I can, good. The problem with doing it in here is that all the nice clean cars are in here. Let's move away from the Alpha at least. Well, we've reached the end of today's little adventures because it's time to go and do school pickup time. Then I've got to go and edit this, and then I'll give it out to you lovely people to see tonight, to see how far we've got through our little adventure with the Mini A series. And well, it's been good news, frankly, because honestly, I had no idea what I was going to find. It just never really occurred to me that the engine was going to be bad. So I never looked at it, but thankfully it turns out that as far as we can tell without actually putting some petrol in it and starting it, it's probably a good one, which is frankly a massive relief. I've spent a bit of time grinding some of the paint off, well, the oil cover, some of the back of the block, this bit of suspension. There is a number of hours of grinding left to come, to be honest, and I'm not going to film all of it because it's going to get very boring indeed. It'll be like a time lapse or just a complete turn of the clock, and bada bing, it'll be shiny metal, and then we can get on with painting it. So yeah, there's a lot of mind-numbing, ear-ringing grinding to come. But yeah, this is good, a good little bit of progress today because, well, we could have been looking at having to get a new engine for this thing, which would have sent the entire project in an entirely new direction if the engine was no good, and the fact the engine and gearbox was such a rarity. And if we were having to either rebuild it or scrap it, then yeah, completely different project. I mean, forget originality. If the engine is going, do anything really, couldn't you? But no, we're going to stick with this because this seems to be, fingers crossed and touch wood, a good one. So yeah, fantastic. Well, if you've enjoyed this, please, as always, hit like and subscribe and join us again next time. Well, I don't know if we're doing more Mini or something else. We've got a few other things to get on with, haven't we? Right, well, thanks for watching and see you again soon.